Hi, I'm Rick Kite with the D.B. Reinhardt Institute for Ethics and Leadership at Viterbo University. This week's Ethical Life column is about a teacher from Pennsylvania who was fired after posting negative comments about some of her students on a regular blog site. Some of the parents found out about these comments even though they weren't really intended to be shared widely. They found out about these comments, they asked the administrators not to allow their students to be in her classes and so forth, and she was eventually fired. But the interesting question really isn't about the grounds for her dismissal. It is the question of how do we handle situations where we become frustrated, either with our students in the case that we're teachers, with our coworkers, even with friends or family members. Not just what do we say about them in like private conversations or certainly public ones, but how do we think about them? How do we manage our own thoughts? This is a question that was taken up by Epictetus about 2,000 years ago, and he addresses it in a little collection of writings called the Handbook, the Enchiridion, translated the Handbook, just a little collection of sayings that comes from him, and I find it a remarkable resource for talking about how do we control our own emotions, but especially our attitudes, because our attitudes are key both for our own happiness, but the key for maintaining healthy relationships with others. So I'll just read a couple things that he says, just a few passages. He says, from the start, work on saying to every harsh appearance, you are an appearance, and not at all the thing that has the appearance. In other words, we have a great deal of control over how things strike us, over our attitudes, just by remembering that the way things appear and the way they really are different. And so how we look at things, this is pretty obvious advice, but how we look at things has a great deal to do with our attitudes. Secondly, he says this, what upsets people is not the things themselves, but their judgments about the things. So when we are thwarted or upset or distressed, never let us blame someone else, but rather ourselves, and that is our own judgments. Our own judgments are always in response to how we perceive things, and they're never directly, at least, the result of what others do or say or the events themselves. It's always mediated by this. How do we think about things? And then finally, I just want to share this beautiful little image that he gives us. He says this, everything has two handles, one by which it may be carried and the other not. If your brother acts unjustly toward you, do not take hold of it by this side, that he has acted unjustly, since this is the handle by which it may not be carried, but instead by this side, that he is your brother, and was brought up with you, and you will be taking hold of it in the way it can be carried. In other words, whenever we're dealing with somebody that causes us some frustration, probably talking directly about that frustration is not a way that we're going to ever be able to improve that relationship or develop any positive way of engaging with that person going forward. So what we have to do is find some good in them. If we can find the good that they do, something that we admire, we appreciate, that's generally the handle by which we may pick up that relationship and move forward with it.